went into Germany. This is like 1939. He didn't believe this, but there was very strange organizations and different research groups all over, not just Germany, but in the occupied countries too. And strangely enough, Germany was putting in production fantastic vehicles. They didn't have wings on these aircraft. They didn't have empennage or tails. They had landing gears. Some of them were triangular shaped. Some were rectangular shaped. Some were round shaped, like a saucer. And so he, being a spy for the Navy, found out all of these fantastic situations that were going on inside of Germany. And this is an important point. Instead of him going to his boss, coming back to the United States, he went directly to the Secretary of the Navy, Forrestal. Forrestal gets tapped on the shoulder. He gets told, don't select a Navy officer to head up these operatives. What? He's told to select somebody who had never been in Annapolis. Now, almost every Navy officer, whether they're a one-star or a lieutenant commander, they've all been through Annapolis to learn how to be a Navy officer. It turns out Forrestal is told that every book in the libraries, every book in the colleges, every book in the universities, every book on this planet is misinformation. It's misinformation. So, which is initiated by the Draco reptilians as far back as 6,000 years ago.
The reptilians really came into control and started to be able to manipulate what was going on the face of the planet about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. It is true that they have different masking technologies to be able to be in a room and look like a human, but usually they're in underground bases in various places on the globe, as well as in a huge area in Antarctica. The southeast region has a large number of underground caverns that are kept extremely warm, too warm for humans, by geothermal heat. It's a perfect place for all of these colonies that the reptilians have. They're basically cities, huge cities with millions of them.
So, the Secretary of the Navy selects Rick Obata. He's not even an American. He comes over here with his family. He goes to school here. He goes to the second year in high school. He leaves school. He joins the Navy as a third-class seaman, works his way up in the Navy. Now he's a commander, okay? That commander is selected by the Secretary of the Navy to head up all of these operatives, to go back into Germany and find out what's going on. Because that individual had never had misinformation given to him about every technical field on the planet.
Everything we learn in the establishment-controlled education systems is specifically designed to program our minds away from the truth. Physics is wrong. Medicine is wrong. History is wrong. Everything we are taught in textbooks is mainly wrong. And this is done purposefully so we don't understand how to move our bodies, how to feed our bodies, what really happened in the past, what technology can really do these days. All of these things, if we learn them, would help us empower ourselves, would help us actually understand what's really going on with our reality.
Now, if you were to go to San Diego and look over at North Island, you're going to see a tall building like this. There's a small office in the top of that building, which is a secret office for the Admiral. This is where the operatives come to. So the Admiral's aide comes to my barracks, taps me on the shoulder, and he only says one word: he's here. We drive over to that building, we get up to the top, we go into this conference room, a small room. Admiral Riccobotta sits here, I sit here, and one of 3 other bosses that I have are all captains. So now I have 3 captains as bosses, and now a 2-star admiral. He just got another raise. Wow. He just came back from Lockheed. He just came back from Scripps Institute. He just came back from all the aircraft company. Wow. Now he's got these operatives coming in. So the operative sits on the other side of the table. He discloses to us these fantastic things that Germany is doing that make no sense. Now I have 8 girls and 3 PhDs as a group. We put together a package from what the operative brings back. Some of it is photographs. Once in a while, it's a manual, hardly any manual. A couple of manuals were not even in English, German, or any other language. They were extraterrestrial hieroglyphics. You see all of this stuff. You hear it. You understand what the Germans are doing. They didn't just get documents from the extraterrestrials. They got brand spanking new space vehicles. Here's one. Here's another one. They brought these. They take you inside. They show you how to drive it. So they put me in a secret laboratory, which is designing not flying wings like Northrop does, okay? These are just a fuselage with no wings and no tail. Half airplane, half spaceships. This is what Northrop is designing. Our first spaceships are U.S. Navy attack class submarines. We put together programs that went all the way out into the galaxy, not just this galaxy.
The military-industrial complex, back when they were testing a lot of the technology that they had received from the Nazis after World War II, as well as from ETs, when they were doing proof of concept testing, they had attached this technology to a regular submarine, and then they flew it out of our atmosphere. That was the first time that they were really able to fly a vessel out of our atmosphere using electrogravitic technology. The reason that they used a submarine was, of course, because they were self-enclosed. The crews that served on them were used to serving 6 months or more away from home, having all of their supplies with them. And they had the psychology of being able to handle those tight quarters for such a long time. The technology developed to a point to where they developed the finances, this financial schemes, to begin to build out fleets of these long cigar-shaped craft. Some of them were kilometer long or longer, and they could make them longer by putting in sections. And the sections were modular, just like in modern submarines. They could take apart the fuselage and pull out sections. It could, one of these modules could be set for like 3 or 4 months as a laboratory for a bunch of different scientific programs. And then at its next time at port, the modules are swapped out, and then it's a hospital ship. The modules swapped out the next time, and it's a troop transport, or it's just a long-haul freighter. So these ships are very modular, and in the beginning, they were using power systems that were nuclear. Then they moved to thorium type of electrical generation, and then they moved to some sort of zero-point electrical generation. And that is what they currently use.
This is totally unreal that this happened like in 1942 on this planet. Extraterrestrial come from who knows where out in the galaxy. Germany gets to be the country that these Draco reptilians pick out to do two types of missions. One, to remove all of the people that Hitler didn't want in his country, and every one of them around the planet. Two, to take every man, woman, and child on this planet and put them in slave factories, men, women, and children, to build and construct all these different types of Draco Navy space battle group ships. This may sound like insanity. This is what happened.
He had concluded from what these insiders were telling him that the Germans had actually made treaties with a highly aggressive and highly negative reptilian humanoid race that they've called the Saurians or the Draco. This treaty involved the Nazis actually being given workable technology that is built with our own conventional systems. They use a sort of mercury turbine, a type of mercury called red mercury. And then they are actually able to leave the Earth. They had a settlement on the moon, they had a settlement on Mars, and they were doing this stuff as early as 1939, even before World War II actually started. As you can imagine, everybody was thinking he was crazy, but yet these insiders were reporting literally standing there, in which you have 8-foot tall, even 12 to 14 foot tall reptilian extraterrestrials, terrifying in appearance, they smell bad, actually advising the Germans on how to build this stuff in these various bases, including that in Antarctica.
Operation High Jump was an operation commissioned in 1947 that was led by Admiral Richard Byrd. And on the public level, it was said that this was a scientific exploration. But what happened was that this operation was commissioned with 33 ships, 13 aircraft, and 5,000 men. Now, this was not a scientific exploration with that many men and that many ships. What Operation High Jump actually was commissioned for was to go down to Antarctica and basically root out the Nazi installations that they had built pre and during World War II. The DC flyover was an event that occurred over successive weekends in July of 1952 in Washington, DC. And what had happened was that there was a mass sighting right over the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. There was many lights in the sky. Now, many people believe that this was a UFO or an extraterrestrial incident, but in fact, it was not. It was German saucers, German craft that were flying over the Capitol building and essentially forcing the hand of the Americans to accept many of these Nazi scientists into their control structures. When many of these Nazi scientists came into America after World War II in Operation Paperclip, they infiltrated into basically every power structure in the United States, government, media, medical systems, basically everything. After World War II, James Forrestal went to Germany to tour many of the research facilities that the Germans had over in Europe, and John F. Kennedy actually accompanied him on those tours. Some believe that Kennedy was actually given information by Forrestal about secret space programs and the UFO phenomena. And near the end of James Forrestal's career, He was also embroiled in many policy struggles within the United States government. He wanted to disclose the UFO phenomenon and the technologies associated with it. It was said that he committed suicide by jumping out of a high-rise hospital that he was staying in at the time of his death. But of course, many people are also believing that he was actually pushed out of the window and in fact assassinated to prevent him from working to disclose these technologies in UFO projects.
They had a really troubled Eisenhower that passed over the torch over to Kennedy, before leaving his famous speech of, beware of the misplaced powers when the industrial military complex, and that only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can protect our future liberties and freedoms. Kennedy, with his background in Office of Naval Intelligence, and documents show that he was aware all the way back to 1942 of operations happening. Kennedy had Allen Dulles as the CIA director. Finding the nefarious activities that Allen Dulles was doing, he eventually fired Dulles and was replaced with John McCone. Because Kennedy was trying to look into these activities, Allen Dulles set up an assassination directive that was revealed in what was called the Byrne Memo, one of James Jesus Angleton's memos that they were attempting to try to destroy all. One intelligence operative was able to pull it, basically saying that Lancer, or the code word for JFK, has been looking into our activities. This we must not allow. This group was working with the group that was with the Treaty of 1955. So when Kennedy put forth a top secret document to the CIA director looking into the MJ-12 and CIA operations with the extraterrestrial, he was silenced with an assassination 10 days later. Years went by. By the way, the Warren Commission, which, Kennedy's famous piece of infiltrated monolithic conspiracy and beware of the dangers of secrecy and secret societies. Ironically, the Warren Commission, who said, we have a lone gunman that did this, was all made up of 33rd degree Freemasons. And afterward, the CIA put out a memorandum to its operatives to use the term conspiracy theorists for anybody questioning, and it's used today as a common ploy to discredit people who are questioning the situation.
The closest we ever came to having technologies and the existence of non-terrestrials go public was actually in 1962-63. I'm told through Alliance sources that President Kennedy was indeed going to make some announcements, and also make announcements that he was going to take drastic steps against some of these secret societies that were running the planet. Therefore, they worked through the CIA to have him eliminated. When he was eliminated in a very public way, the cabal came into power in a very public way. They had been controlling things very covertly up until that point. But since then, they have overtly controlled the destiny of the United States.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm
wild.
sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322.
I don't,
College, were you in the same secret society? That's all right. Let me answer his question. Excuse me, what are you asking? Whoa. Is anybody watching this?
Yale University is 300 years old this year, and were you to visit its campus, you would see that it still has exotic clubhouses, which look like tombs where Yale's legendary secret societies meet.
The videotape provides a grainy glimpse into what appear to be the initiation rituals of a secret society that's been around since 1832, whose members have gone on to be leaders of Wall Street and the White House, the Senate and the Supreme Court. What they captured, they say, was initiates, known as neophytes, being forced to kiss a skull, then members performing a mock killing. Still, Rosenbaum says the tape is a valuable artifact, an extremely rare view into the secret society that groomed the American ruling class for generations. Dan Harris, ABC News, New York.
We see the remains of humans with elongated skulls all over the world. When you look at Egypt, there are countless depictions of the pharaohs having these weirdly elongated skulls. This includes Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their daughter Meritaten. In the case of Meritaten, there are multiple granite busts that you can see that were carved of her, in which she clearly has no hair and has this freakishly elongated skull. And remember, this is a culture that was apparently building pyramids at the time that these sculptures were made. The people with the elongated skulls had apparently been keeping their lineage secret and hidden in the Egyptian priesthood. But then remember that Egypt became weak and it was conquered by Rome. What happened when the Romans got in there is that they made a secret agreement with these people in the Egyptian priesthood who still had the elongated skulls, and they created a safe haven for them in the Vatican City. The Library of Alexandria was burned down, but only with a false flag, where they burned tax documents and census documents. They took all the good stuff that included books from before they came to Earth and relocated that to the Vatican Library. Then you go across to the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and once again you have a pyramid building culture in Mesoamerica with people depicted in their inscriptions who have elongated skulls. And unlike the case of Egypt, with Mesoamerica we now have the added benefit that there are multiple elongated skulls that have been dug up and were not censored, but are actually on display in museums in places like Bolivia. We have the researcher Brian Forster, who is bringing out new examples of elongated skulls, and they are being genetically tested, they're being analyzed, and they have clear physiological differences from the skulls that the rest of us have. These people have very large brains. Discover magazine in the year 2009 came out with an article called "What Happened to the Hominids Who Were Smarter Than Us?" And it describes how in the early 20th century, elongated skulls were found in Boskop, South Africa, thus earning them the name the Boskop skulls. And they were given ceremonial burials. Apparently these people were revered in their society. But the article claims that the brain volume is almost twice what ours would be, and thus the average person in their society would have an IQ of 150, and some of them could have an IQ that goes up to 300. These weird elongated skulls were also found in a dig in Siberia in a town called Omsk, and the men who dug them up were so afraid that many of them actually started crying and left their jobs and refused to come back. We furthermore see in the case of the Mongolian conquerors that there were reports of them having weird elongated skulls. And most recently, even in Europe, we have found tombs of the nobility, the wealthy people who preserve their bloodlines, such as in France. And they also have this bizarre elongated skull feature. It wasn't until insiders started talking to me that I thought about the fact that in the Vatican, you see people wearing these mitre hats, and those hats would very nicely conceal an elongated skull. these people with elongated skulls would look like us in their faces, and the hat would conceal the only thing that would make them appear to be different.